So I'm Toolman Tim. We got a YouTube channel, a podcast, TikTok channel. Basically, I started it all because my wife got tired of listening to me talk about tools, so I thought I would start a YouTube channel and I would talk about tools. And then it turned into a podcast where I get to share my real passion, which is entrepreneurship and preparedness. And what I really love to see is people doing great things, succeeding. Every time somebody reaches out to me, I want to hear what they're doing, where they're doing it, how they're succeeding, what their plans are. And I just want to encourage people. 100% of the time, that's what I love to do. There's nothing I love to see more than when somebody comes up to me here, like last night, and says, Tim, I started the handyman business because of what you talked about, and now I'm working on buying a garage or a home or whatever it is. It's rather humbling because, I don't know, I always think, how in the world did I ever get to this point? And it's pretty friggin' cool. So yeah, that's the elevator pitch of what I do and who I am.
So preparedness, what is that? What does that mean?
Yes, patent pending preparedness. So that was a couple of years ago. So when I first joined the Prepper Broadcast Network, James said, I'd love to have you on. I'd love you to start creating content over here. So I ended up wanting to so I decided I was already doing a Sunday evening interview show. So I thought, hey, I need to put in a Thursday show. And I love home maintenance. I love being prepared. So I come up with this corny line that everybody loves now is preparedness, the art of home maintenance when help isn't around the corner. And basically the whole idea is being your own handyman, being your own hardware store, and being prepared for anything that can come your way. So I try to teach people to have a regular routine maintenance, to set up a schedule, because the thing is, if you fix a loose screw now, it's not going to become a door falling off its hinges tomorrow. So 90% of preparedness is being proactive, doing the things that you need to do or should do ahead of time. So I talk to people about keeping extra belts on hand for their furnace blower. I talk about keeping extra filters on, about cleaning out your HVAC system so that it doesn't overheat in the summertime and die on you. Learning how to do the little things, and then baby steps as you work your way up. So it might be as simple as, I'm first going to learn how to change a little flapper valve in the back of a toilet. And then maybe we'll move up to changing a whole toilet. And then, hey, damn, maybe I'll end up tackling an entire bathroom renovation. Who knows? But it all started from, I wonder if I can do this. And then my wife's always here and she's like, yeah, you can do that, hun. And I'm like, I don't think I can. She goes, yeah, go ahead and do it. And then I try, and I might fail miserably the first time, but by the second time I've learned. And I always say the only mistake is the one you don't learn from. Because if you learn from a mistake, it's not a mistake, it's a learning experience. And so that's what I try to empower people to do with preparedness is experiment and learn in low stress situations so that in the bad times, you can handle that kind of stuff.
So you're self-taught, or you went to school for it, or
100%.
Why are you an expert?
Well, I'm an expert because I'm on Jack Spirko's Expert Council on the Survival Pod. No, I'm not an expert. That's why I'm self-taught. I've just failed more than most people, which means I've learned more than most people. Quick backstory. I did 4 years in university. I did a Bachelor of Arts in Religion to be a pastor. I immediately put that to work by working nights at Dairy Queen, and I was the least handy Gen Xer you have ever seen. I didn't know anything about anything. And my dad was handy, my grandfather was exceptionally handy, and I never bothered learning any of it. Until Becky and I got married, we had kids, and we were as broke as a joke. One of my favorite sayings is abject poverty is a great motivator. And I would have to, if our pump died, I had to figure out how to, if we needed to bath the twins, I needed to figure out how to get that pump running. If I needed to trim my yard, my lawn, I had to figure out how to salvage that weed whipper from the dumpster, rebuild a carburetor in order to work it. I saw a TikTok the other day. This guy says, oh, there you go. Your engine's fixed. And she looks at him and she says, well, you're a mechanic, an electrician, a plumber. She said, where'd you go to school to learn all that? He goes, oh, no, I just grew up poor. So that's what it is. We struggled for a long time, and I had to learn all this. It was either that or the house would fall down around us, or we couldn't, we wanted to put new windows in this old home that we lived on the Atlantic Ocean, and it blew, and the wind would come right through it. And we couldn't afford to hire somebody, but we managed to scrape up $1,000 to buy windows. So guess who had to learn how to install insert windows in a 130-year-old home? So that's the type of thing. Everything's self-taught because that's how I learn. I learn best when I can experiment on my own. I can frig up and cuss under my breath or throw something across the room. Then I take a breath, I go in and chill for a minute, and then I go back and do it again. And yeah, that for me, 100% self-taught. And that's I try to shortcut that for other people. So if other people come to me like, how do I start? Well, here's some of the biggest mistakes I've ever made. Here are some of the shortcuts I've learned. So maybe you can learn from me as well.
So the survival podcast and expert panel, what is that for the people who don't?
Yeah, which is the craziest thing ever. I went to prepper camp last year. You would think if you go to prepper, and I'll tell you about this too, guys. So I went to prepper camp, which is the largest outdoor preparedness event in North America. It's in Saluda, North Carolina, last weekend in September. It's incredible. Over 1,000 preppers there. It's so much fun. And people be like, oh, who are you? I'm like, well, I'd usually start by, I'm Tim, and I'm on the Expert Council of the Survival Podcast. I'm like, Jack Spearco. I'm like, I don't know who he is. I'm like, oh, okay. So Jack has the largest prepping podcast of around 250,000 listeners per day. He's big enough that he has Ron Paul contributing segments to his episodes on Friday. And I'm just so lucky enough, not lucky, I worked at it to get on there. I got on the Expert Council as well. So there's some weeks where I'll have an episode about how to fix a clogged toilet. And then the segment that came just before that is how Ron Paul thinks that we can fix the European economy. So it's pretty cool. It's one of the weirdest things I've ever, it's kind of surreal. So that was what kickstarted me getting involved. I mean, I listened to the Survival Podcast for over 10 years. And then I was a guest on the show, and then I reached out to Jack, and I'm like, hey, I know this shit. You should put me on the Expert Council. And he's like, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a chance. He goes, someday when I get a question, I'll send it to you. So 12 hours later, I'm driving on the side of I'm halfway between where I was going. I get an email from Jack, hey, don't fret if you can't do it, but here's something for you. I'm missing some segments. So I pulled over to the side of the road. I recorded the segment right then and there, sent it back to him, and I've been on the Expert Council for him ever since, which has been really, that really helped me get a foundation to build all the content creation in my community from there.
So what is prepper broadcasting?
So that's a crazy thing too that has existed long before I've been around. So my involvement, let's start with that and then we'll go back, because this is the crazy cool, one of my passions in life is to bring together all of these disparate preparedness communities that exist in this ether. You've got PrepperNet, you got the Survival Podcast, you got Living Free in Tennessee, all Prepper Broadcasting Network. And so I just kept reaching out because I wanted to bring us all together, because I think there's power in numbers. And I'm a big fan of, one of my favorite sayings is, a rising tide floats all boats. So if we all support each other, we all come up, right? So anyway, this wasn't the case with Prepper Broadcast Network. Pappy Cannoli is a guy who's on there. It's a really cool name. I didn't really know him. He'd been dipping into my live streams. He introduced me to a guy named James, who is the intrepid commander. He owns the Prepper Broadcast Network, which is a really cool collection of, it's over a dozen now, content creators who put out podcasts on a basically weekly basis. So we're like the old version of AM talk radio, but way better. And you got, what I love about it, because one day James came to me and he said, I worry that maybe we have too much content. And my belief is that people learn best from people like them, or teachers that they learn from. So the thing is, if you have 12 or 15 or 30 content creators, people are going to be attracted to the one person or the three people that they learn from the most. Some people might like me and can't stand Dave Jones, the NBC guy. Some people might think Dave Jones is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they might think that Tim's a Canadian dirtbag. I'm not going to listen to that communist. So that's the beauty of having choices and options when we're doing that, and I love it. I would absolutely, anybody who's out there who hasn't found Prepper Broadcast Network or any of that, if you need a fill of self-reliance and independence, fill your podcast feed with that, man.
So Prepper Broadcasting is what? How many hosts? How many different podcasts?
I can't keep track. It was, I think, a dozen when I joined, and there at least a couple of more ladies have joined. It's probably getting close to 15 to 18 now.
Do you do your podcast live?
Yes. So my podcast, I recently rebranded from the Workshop Podcast to Workshop Radio, because I have this passion. I grew up listening to talk radio. Anybody's workshop I would go into would always have an old AM radio hanging on a shelf with whatever the local talk radio was. And I miss that. And so it doesn't mean I'm going to be boring like that, but I love long-form conversational content. So I put out, in the wintertime, 4 episodes a week on the Workshop podcast. And in the summer, I do 3 episodes a week. And my Thursday episode is also simulcasted or simul-hosted from over on PBN as well. So yeah, I do four episodes a week. Every one of them's recorded live. I do an hour to 2 hour. We just broke a record the other night. I had a guy on, he's into microgreens, and we decided we were going to just freeform converse, and it was 3 hours and 5 minutes we went. So I had to split that into 2 episodes. That's not a normal thing, but if you like long form Joe Rogan open forum kind of content, that's what I dig. So anyway, yeah, 3 to 4 episodes a week, and it's in my feed, and then the Thursday episode also simul hosts over on PBN.
With the PBN show,
yes,
you can, like me, I can get on and chat with you while you're
absolutely
doing the show, ask you questions, and then you can just answer me.
That's the best part of this. So with PBN Thursday, we have a built-in chat client that you have to join. It's called Element. We have our own chat rooms there, and I love it. We get interaction there, and then across all the board. That's the beauty of being live, is you get to interact instantly with not just the community, but also the creator. So if you have a question, I'll be like, hey, throw out the questions, I'll star them, we'll ask them at the end. And I will answer them. That's what I love about it. It's the best part of it. I'll go an extra hour if we have questions, because the live interaction is where it's at, and it's not big enough that it's, you ever been in a live stream where there's 12,000 comments and they're just, running crazy? We're not that big. That's what we're a good community that supports itself, but it's still accessible enough for everybody, and that's what I love.
With your show topics,
yes,
do you have a lot of information, a lot of notes, and you stick to the show topic, or are you kind of like James, and whatever the show topic is absolutely what you're not talking about?
Okay, yes and no. I'm interviews. So we'll start with, I love doing interviews. So Sunday evenings are my interviews. They're a lot of fun. I used to require questions up front. So if somebody wanted to be interviewed, I would say, hey, give me 8 questions as a jump off point. I discovered that made the episode feel a little bit wooden. Not everybody feels that way, and I get it, because it's a little bit nerve-wracking coming in green. I like to research the person I'm going to discuss with and know some things. But then I like to get the openness and chat with people as we go. And I have a few questions that I ask almost everybody, but then I let it go. I know what I want to talk about, and we come around that. But for me, there's power in the story. And so questions are there, but I want to hear your story. I want to learn how you became absolutely bankrupt on a school bus to the fact that you're going to buy a private jet before too long. And I want to know, what do you think that guy would think about today? That's what I go in. I bring entrepreneurs on the show. I had the inventor of the forearm forklift recently, those orange straps that everybody uses for lifting. And what a cool story. He's gone to court against Amazon. He's just a drop dead awesome entrepreneur. It was great. I've had best-selling authors like William Fortune. He's come on. I love all that. So I will prep ahead of time by researching the person coming on, but I like to have an open subject. Now, on Thursdays, it's usually a deep dive. So I'll do a deep dive into, one of my favorite right now is the history of modern preparedness. And so I go decade by decade from the 40s up till today, looking at what preppers or homesteaders or retreaters or survivalists, whatever they called them throughout the decades, what they were doing. And that is like an 8 to 10 hour research ahead of time and 8 to 10 pages of notes that I go through. I still do the show live, but there's a ton of research in it. Then Friday nights are usually my wife and I spitballing something, very little notes. We might do something like our top 5 mid-90s post-apocalyptic films, and we will just razz off each other, and she'll tell me I'm a horrible choice of movies, and I'll tell her how she doesn't know good film, and it's fun. But we do anything. One night we did an episode on how we use Amazon subscriptions to build our prep. So Friday's chill, laid back, Sunday's a deep dive interview, and Thursday is always typically a deep dive into a specific topic.
So I saw you have a fanboy moment here. You've had a lot of people on your show. Who is the one person that you
Mike
had
Rowe.
on?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me who I haven't had. Sorry, I cut you off. I was so excited. I always tell everybody. Sorry, go ahead.
Who's the one person you've had on the show that you were just, wow, this was the most amazing interview or topic or whatever that you've ever done? What's your best show?
William Fortune.
And who's that?
He is the author of 1 Second After. He actually had he wrote for those of you who don't know the term prepper porn, that's like books about the end of the world that we love to read, fiction. Anyway, he was very passionate and discovered that most of modern technology is very susceptible to an electromagnetic pulse. So in the 90s and early 2000s, he really spearheaded the movement to try to get the government to harden things against it. So whether it worked or didn't, anyway. This dude had Newt Gingrich write the foreword to his book. And I took a chance and I reached out to him and I'm like, hey, I know you're into metal detecting. I know you're into antique airplanes. You're also an incredible author. I'd love to have you come on and talk about everything. And one thing led to another. I spent hours digging in because there's two things when I do an interview that I want. Number one, I want their eyes to light up at some point when I find the topic that the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, the thing that makes you smile. And number two, I want to ask them a question that they say, I've never been asked that question before. And I had both moments he said at the end, he says, make sure you call me Bill. And I'm like, I can't do that, but it was pretty friggin' cool. But absolutely, right now, I mean, I've had a lot of awesome interviews. I had Chris Weatherman on before, who was the Angry American, the author of Going Home. I've had some pretty cool entrepreneurs. It's unreal. But yeah, if I had to pick one, I would for sure William Fortune, for sure.
Okay, let's go back to your Mike Rowe one.
Yes.
Who do you want to have on the show?
Sorry, I pushed you a little there. Yeah, no. So I'm a big believer in making your goals public and saying things that you're going to have happen. I'm not this hoity-toity guy who thinks you speak things into existence. But what I will say is when you say things and use your words, it focuses your attention on getting them and it forces you to be accountable. And also, there's this great thing that every time you put your words out there, somebody's going to hear it. And eventually the right person's going to hear this. And I've been turned down by Mike Rowe's people 4 or 5 times now. And that's okay because he's going to come on my show. And the reason is twofold. I grew up watching his stuff. Not that, he's that much older than me, but I did. But also, his entire philosophy is what I built our independence on. So I started a handyman business doing all the shitty, dirty jobs that nobody else wanted to do. And that's exactly what Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs, I loved watching that show. So I'm going to have, Gary Vee, he always says he's going to own the New York Jets. I always say I'm going to have Mike Rowe on the show with me at some point. And it'll happen. It absolutely will.
Who else would be a white whale? Somebody that you've been chasing forever and you just can't seem to get them on.
I've reached out to a couple of authors right now. Jeff Kirkman, I've made contact with him and I'd love to have him on. He wrote the Black Autumn series. He's also the co-founder of, I believe it's the Rat's Tourniquet and Black Rifle Coffee. So I know it just hasn't worked out yet, but I would love to have him on. Bradley Garrett, he wrote the book Bunker. He's been on Joe Rogan, and I've made contact with him, but it hasn't come together yet. I really want him because he is such an interesting feller. He did underground urban exploration in the old tubes of London for years and eventually almost went to prison over it. And then after that, he's like, what am I going to do next? I'm going to write the book Bunker, which is a modern... It's like from thousands of years ago to today, it's a sociological look at why people prep. The dude is a genius, and I absolutely got to have him on my show too.
You seem to have a lot of favorite sayings.
Sure I do, yeah.
Is that where all this came from?
Yes. So, let's grab a couple here, and I'll show you. I'm a firm believer in a value for value exchange, and in our community, I've been told many times that I needed to provide something that people could support the workshop with. And one day I had a conversation with a guy and I'm like, how do you have so many hats? He says, I don't have a lot of hats, I just have a lot of patches. And that spurred in me, I'm like, oh yeah, we're preppers. We love patches. Everybody loves to wear patches. I buy things with Velcro on them. And I always have all these old sayings like, if you try, the only thing you get when you flog a dead horse is a bigger mess, that kind of stuff. So those are the type of things. It pays to buy quality and just funny things. So a lot of times these things come up in the shows. So what I did was I started designing patches around them. So like this one, doers are better than don'ters. That was just a funny one that Amy Dingman come up from A Farmer's Kind of Life. So in prepping, we always do 2 is 1, 1 is none, 3 is for me. Well, I changed it to 3 is a guarantee. And that's one of my patches. And then, of course, we all talk about making our own fuel, right? So I put, can I drink this fuel? And a picture of moonshine. And then my all-time favorite was my very first one, and everybody still comments on it every event I go to. Been prepping since Y2K, and it's designed on those Best Buy stickers that said, don't forget to turn your computer off on December 31st, 1999. And for some reason, I've always been obsessed with the concept of Y2K. I loved it. I wasn't really paying attention to it at the time, and I love going back and digging deep, but this one just resonates with people. It's got the nostalgia factor, So yeah, that's what I did at patchofthemonth.co. That's where you can go. That's where you sign up. And every month you get a tactical patch, a morale patch in the mail, and I usually throw a little something extra in there too. But it's a cool way to keep in contact with people, and it's been a way for my community to support what I do.
So how can we find you? Where are you at? You have a website?
I'm in all the places. But yeah, so the website is toolmantim.co. That's the easiest place. And you can find me at Toolman Tim, Toolman Tim's Workshop on YouTube, Toolman Tim's Workshop on TikTok. The podcast has recently used to be the Workshop Podcast. It's now Workshop Radio. It's a really neat, you'll see it. It's a black and white, it says Workshop. It's got an old AM radio on it. Those are the best places to find me. Also Telegram. We have an incredible Telegram community there. I love Telegram because it's kind of a running tally of the day where everybody can interact and chat. And I always try to encourage people to drop into the Telegram group and chat, because that's what we do. While I'm on the road, I check in with people, I talk to people, and it's just where we all keep up.
Well, that's all I have for this video. Bang around that bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos come out. Call us on the hotline if you have comments or questions and want to be featured in an upcoming video. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe. Check us out on the website, and we'll see you guys on the next one.